What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with your DFS preview for this week's Sentry Tournament of Champions. But before we get into that, I have a lot of announcements, a lot of news to break. So let's go through each one of these items individually. First off, this is going to be the first January that golf is my full-time focus. So I am super stoked for what's coming this season. That means upgrades to the tools. It means more content. It means just more of this face everywhere, which I don't know if you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the truth. Which in addition leads me to my next announcement that if you have not heard, if you have not seen on Twitter, I am now joining part of the CBS Sports team, where I will be hosting the First Cut podcast. You might see me on other platforms, but I'm very excited about it. They are, to me, headed in a great direction for golf coverage, and it just allows me to talk more about golf than I normally do, so it should be a lot of fun. That podcast is called the First Cut Podcast. I'll talk more about that in a second. It's a lot of we've got great guests on there to talk about golf and break down the tournaments and previews and reviews and a lot of cool stuff. Additionally, I've started a season-long fantasy league for this year, a best ball league. After I drafted with the boys on the DraftKings YouTube channel, we did a season-long draft. It got me super stoked, and I launched a 200-person fantasy league that I am the commissioner of, and it is completely full. It filled up way quicker than I possibly expected. I have a video on the channel that I'll link to here if you want to go see the announcement about the fantasy draft, but there is one spot left because I saved a spot to give away. So if you're in the contest already, if you've already signed up and saved your spot, you can still win this, and I will pay for your entry for you of $50. Or if you're not in yet, this is the only way to get in, is to win this draw. So here's what you have to do. Go to the First Cut Podcast by CBS Sports in the Apple iTunes store and leave it a 5-star review. Say something nice. Hey, looking forward to the 2020 season. Something nice you want to say about the show. Make sure you subscribe. There is going to be a lot of great stuff that we'll put out over there, and it will not impact anything going on here at DFS On Demand. You're still going to get all the same great stuff. I will randomly draw someone, so leave your Twitter handle, and I will give you the last spot in that fantasy league. So I will link the First Cut Podcast in the description below so that you have that easy access to it because it's your last chance to get in. I already have a waiting list like 24 people long, so this is basically it. This is your only chance to get in. All right, that's news and updates. Now, for 2020, I am going to be releasing on January 1st a new in 2020 video. So what's new? And it'll go through the updates that have been done to the site, the tools, any of the content that we're going to be doing. It'll just kind of encapsulate everything. But you are going to see some new aspects of the tools here today in this video. If you want to access these tools, you can do so. It's my site. It's dfsondemand.com. $7 a week, $20 a month. Pay for the whole year. You're going to play all season long anyway. This is the best time of year. You might as well go lock it in. Better price. But I will, as we do every week, I will give you I will have a draw for one person to win a weekly membership to my site. So not to bombard you with a bunch of things to do, but if you would like to enter the draw for access to DFS On Demand, there's 2 ways to do so. Make sure you're subscribed to my RickRunGood YouTube channel. Like the video, subscribe, and comment below with who you think is going to win the Tournament of Champions this week. That is way number 1. Way number 2 is to go review this DFS On Demand podcast that you might be listening to right now. Leave it a 5-star review, say something nice about the show, and leave me your Twitter handle so I can get a hold of you. I'll pick one winner from each side like we do every single week. So I know that's a lot, but there is a lot of good news. There is a lot of cool things going on, a lot of ways you can win basically cash value prizes, $50 for the fantasy league, $7 for what the weekly membership at DFS On Demand would be worth. So there's a lot going on. I'm super excited for this year, and now I guess it's time to get into the Tournament of Champions. All right, Kapalua, Sentry Tournament of Champions. The guys are in Maui. It is going to be a birdie fest. Remember, this is a resort course. A lot of these guys taking the opportunity to bring the family, be on a little vacation, not a lot of pressure out here. Fairways as wide as a football field. We'll talk about that narrative a little bit in a second, but what you can expect is the winning score to be low mid 20s, under par, something like that. We've seen Xander win this last year. In fact, he boat raced Gary Woodland on Sunday, shooting a 62, stealing this away from him. We've seen DJ win, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth won by like a million strokes. And just to kind of show you this visually, if you go over to the historic strokes gained tool on DFS On Demand, you can see the strokes gained breakdown from the last 2 years. So I'll add in previous years before this, but you can see Xander goes out, gains 5 strokes putting, gained in every single category, wins this thing. Gary Woodland played really well. Justin Thomas was excellent tee to green, but lost strokes putting. So you can kind of see the last 2 years, and then, Dustin Johnson in 2 starts here, no one has gained more strokes gained total in those 2 years than he has, right? So that's someone that we'll keep an eye on, but you can mess around with this tool here a little bit. Bryson DeChambeau last year gaining almost 7.5 strokes on the green, probably not going to happen again, and he's not in the field, so it's definitely not going to happen again. So let's jump over to the cheat sheet here and start with 4 guys over $10,000, led by Jon Rahm at $11,400, Justin Thomas at $11,200, Xander at $10,600, and Dustin Johnson at $10,100. As we continue to go through the year, obviously this strokes gained section of the cheat sheet is going to fill itself out. Some of these guys have not played measured strokes gained rounds this year. So that's why you're seeing blanks there. But we've got recent tournaments on the PGA Tour, and then, of course, your tournament history here. And no one is hotter than Jon Rahm right now, which is why he gets the $11,400 price tag. He won the Open de España. He won the race to Dubai over in Europe, and then he finished second at the Hero World Challenge, which basically 3 straight almost win second is a pretty good start to the recent run. And he's $11,400. I think that's fine. I mean, I don't have any problem with him being the most expensive golfer. I certainly think Justin Thomas could have been, considering Thomas has been almost just as hot between the win over at the CJ Cup, 17th at the Zozo, and then he dominated the President's Cup. Now you look at it and you've got a past champion here, a guy who's finished first in 2017 and third in 2019. That's a lot of goodness going well for Justin Thomas. But to me, excuse me, the clear misprice, I don't want to call it, I just think it's undervalue, is Dustin Johnson. He's $10,100. I think he's undervalued in the betting markets. He's like 10-1 to win this, behind Rahm, Thomas, and Schauffele. And if we just assume, okay, he had like a good year last year, he didn't have a great year. He really struggled down the stretch, and then we find out he had a knee procedure in the offseason. Played okay in the President's Cup. Played well enough to make me think he's going to be just fine. The market has kind of moved off of DJ, right? And I think, if we say, okay, he got his knee cleaned up, that probably led to his issues down the stretch last year. He's going to be just fine. $10,100 for a guy who, if we woke up January 1st, 2021, and Dustin Johnson was the number 1 player in the world, would anybody be surprised? I don't think we would. So when DJ wins again, you're not going to get a price like this. It's a 34-man field. Yes, it is pretty top heavy. The bottom of it kind of stinks, but it's pretty top heavy. DJ absolutely in play here at $10,100. So then you drop down into the 9s, and there's a guy here at $9,000, Patrick Reed, that is really piquing my interest. And I want to jump over to another tool to show you this. So I'm going to jump over to the player profiles here. So you can see Patrick Reed, and I scroll down to his logs. 8th place at the World Golf Championships, the HSBC. 17th at the Zozo, finished 9th at the Tour Championship. He won the Northern Trust, which was a a playoff event. I mean, he played pretty well at the end of last season. He was, leading the Hero World Challenge late, and then he went and got absolutely crushed at the President's Cup. And Patrick Reed is already a pretty unpopular golfer. Throw in the fact that he cheats at the Hero World Challenge, then gets his butt kicked. Like, I don't know how many people are rushing to get Patrick Reed when, in all honesty, like, this is the time I want to play him. He's $9,000. He's won here before. When he gets hot, he gets scorching hot, unlike anybody else. And I mentioned it at the top, like, a lot of guys use this as a vacation. There's no chance Patrick Reed uses this as a vacation. This guy, who is the king of chip on his shoulder, now comes to a place after just being everybody's punching bag for the last couple of weeks. He can shut everybody up by going out and winning this golf tournament. And it's a really good course for him. I mean, we've seen him win here in the past. Like this to me is like, I'll buy on Patrick Reed in this position, because I think public perception is really down on him. His golf hasn't been bad outside the fact that he got smoked at the President's Cup. It happens, right? It's team events. It's whatever. He played terribly, but hey, outside of that, the results recently have been really good. I can go back to Patrick Reed here and try to get him at a lower ownership, considering there's only 34 players in the field. I'm going to bounce around here a little bit. I've got the cheat sheet open, but I'm actually going to flip over to the course key stats, which, again, because we don't have a lot of data from this season, there are some guys that are blanking here or not showing up. Like, we don't have any data on Rahm this year. Some guys don't have strokes gained data, so that's being omitted. But, Kapalua is a very, very unique course, not only in actually the way it is built, but also in the field that you get. So when you look at what the highest correlated stats to success are, of course they are going to be FedEx Cup points, official money, official world rank, strokes gained total, because the only guys that play here are champions. So obviously they play well. They end up with a lot of money. They end up well in FedEx Cup points. So I want you to kind of disregard this highest correlated stats. This is the only time all year we have a field that is strictly winners. Now the other stats are interesting. So for example, driving distance became more important here at Kapalua than any of the other 50 courses on the PGA Tour Rota. And what this means, if you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome. Should have probably welcomed you, 12 minutes ago, but welcome. This is one of my favorite tools that you're looking or listening to right now. It's a course key stats where I've compiled all of the data for, I think we're out to 12 years now, and looked at every single course and compared it to what types of golfers have success there. This is the opposite of what people will do when they say, oh, last year at the Tournament of Champions, guys that putted well won. Or of course they did, because they putted well, they won, right? Like, when someone says that, or, the winner gained strokes putting, gained 2 strokes putting per round, but someone in 10th gained 1 stroke putting per round. Well, like, okay, that's kind of obvious, because the guys who gain more strokes finish higher than others. Like, that's pretty common sense. So what I've tried to do is take the season-long stats for every golfer and compare it to how they played at each course. So guys who end the year, top 10 in driving distance, were they better at longer courses? Were they better at shorter courses? Whatever. And you throw that all into this regression model, and it spits out which stats are more important at each course. So, for example, driving distance and guys who drove the ball long over the course of the last 12 years had more success at Kapalua than anywhere else. Okay, that's the way this reads. Same thing for strokes gained putting. Number 1 course in terms of strokes gained putting. So if you're going to take putters, now's the time. And it kind of makes sense, because one of the other stats, one of the most important stats, was 3-putt avoidance, which makes complete sense, because these greens at Kapalua are like football fields. You can have like an 80-foot putt, and a lot of bad putters can easily 3-putt that. So it's very interesting to see what happens here? I mean, birdie or better percentage, no kidding. Of course, that is a very important stat because you're going to have to shoot 25 under par here. So, some of these are better than others, but I did want to point that out to you. And one that always pops up, week in and week out, anywhere on tour, but even here as well, is strokes gained approach. And this is where you get a lot of value. If you want to go find a specialist, Ryan Palmer leads this field in strokes gained approach during this young season. Dylan Fratelli is up there. Colin Morikawa and Corey Connors. Those are the four guys who are gaining at least one stroke on approach per round this season. Justin Thomas is right behind it as well, and Ches Reavie. So, this is an interesting thing to look at. And there was actually a quote from DJ that I read today where he said they kind of changed some of the green complexes for this year at Kapalua at the Plantation Course. And there's now more like specific tiers. So if you miss the tier that you're supposed to be on, it's more penal. Your ball might roll off a little bit. You're going to have a longer putt. In the past, you could just bomb it out there, hit it into the middle of the green, and you'd have a putt at birdie no matter where you were at. Not necessarily the case, apparently, according to DJ. And he actually mentioned you might want to lay off the driver a little bit because you have to set up your second shot so well. Well, I don't know if that's actually going to be the case. But if it is, it does open up the door for some of these shorter hitting ball strikers like a Ryan Palmer, like a Kevin Kisner, like a Ches Reavie, especially Kisner. Kisner can putt the ball, with the best of them. So, that's an interesting thing that if I was trying to fill out, and get a little value down at the bottom, those might be the golfers that I try to target. And then birdie or better percentage, of course, still very, very young season, but, Xander Schauffele coming in and leading the field at 33% birdie or better. Matt Kuchar right behind him. Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, and Gary Woodland round out the top five there. You're just going to need to make a lot of birdies here. I think that's pretty clear. You're going to have to shoot, probably have to be 6 under every single day and get to 24 under and see if that holds up for you. Woodland almost did it last year until Schauffele just ripped his heart out. As we continue to scroll down the cheat sheet here, there's kind of a dead area in like the sub eights. I mentioned Kisner at 7,700. I mentioned Reavie at 76. I mentioned Palmer at 72. There's not a ton of guys I love to play here. And then at the bottom, it's super ugly. Martin Trainer's 500 to 1 to win this golf tournament. Jim Herman's like 350. But there is a guy here at 6,500, Lanto Griffin. And it might have just been kind of an unworldly run for him where he just, like, to start the swing season, he rattled off like 7 straight top 20s. He went out and he won in Houston. And then, towards the end, might have gotten tired, might have just not been playing well, missed the cut at the RSM, and finished 76th in Mayakoba. So not a great end to his fall, but still even, look at his strokes gain numbers here. He is a positive gainer in all 4 of the major strokes gained categories. And when you compare that to his peers in this price range, he's head and shoulders above them. So, you look at Tyler Duncan, who's probably the next best, gains everywhere but around the greens. Like these two I could probably convince myself into. Duncan's coming off the win at the RSM, so that helps out a lot. But like Max Homa, he's really struggled this season. Martin Trainer, 4 straight missed cuts coming into this thing, at least. That's as far back as my cheat sheet goes at the moment. Losing 3 strokes per round total. Jim Herman losing a 1.6. Homa losing 1.3, and he's priced in the same place as Griffin and Duncan. And if we go back to let's go to the strokes gain database here and see if I can find Lanto Griffin. So this is one of my favorite tools because what I've added this year is that you can see the percentage of rounds that these guys gain or lose strokes in. So here is Lanto, and we can do this by round here. So you can see before he missed the cut at the RSM, it was all green, right? It was like 8 straight rounds that he gained off the tee. Played well tee to green, and when he lost strokes outside of this top round here, when he lost strokes tee to green, he'd only lose like here he lost 1, or here he lost a half a stroke. But when he gains strokes, he gains 2, he gains 3. So you can see, and I can make this even smaller here. So let's do the last 26 weeks, so the last 6 months here. gaining strokes in all 4 categories for Lanto Griffin. And you can see 71% of his rounds he gained off the tee. Less than 50% in approaches, that's a little bit concerning, but the tee to green numbers are still pretty good, 66% of the time. And then overall strokes gained total, he's gaining 76% of the time. So he's not really burning you in any category. He's putting himself in a lot of really good positions, which is how you end up with, 7 straight top 20s and a win during the swing season. So he's someone that I think is pretty interesting coming out of this. And then if we flip back to the cheat sheet, he might be like the lowest guy that I consider playing. I mean, I guess I could get Tyler Duncan in some lineups, but I don't have much interest outside the rest of these guys. But if you're looking for value, Sebastian Munoz is here at 7,100. He's another guy that this swing season gains in all 4 categories. Let's actually pull up his player profile really quickly if I can. Or excuse me, we'll pull up his strokes gain database here. So you can see a 3rd place finish at the RSM, a win back at the Sanderson Farms. That's 2 of his last 5 starts. Missed 1 cut in there at Shriners, but all that green is good. Here's a guy that gains strokes total 71% of the time. Over 50% in every single category. So again, that's consistency. That's not going to kill you. I certainly don't mind him here. I believe it's the first time he's going to be playing this event because that was his first PGA Tour win that we got. But anyway, in terms of value, what I also have is this value matrix where you can come in here and you can type in some of these guys if you're interested, like a Kevin Kisner, and see the value that they're returning. So, this is based on what their salary was and how many fantasy points they returned. Like Kevin Kisner, $6,100 has returned 92 fantasy points at the Hero World Challenge. That's 15 times his salary. That's huge value. And what you'll notice about Kisner is we can adjust his salary range down here. Let's do whenever Kisner is under 8,000. Here he is. He's averaging about 8.5 times value, averages 61 DraftKings points under $8,000. And that's over 32 starts. But you can see just his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In 6 of his last 7 starts, when he's been priced under $8,000, he's returned at least 10 times value. I know that that's like a lot of when the sun is out in August and it's an odd month and an even day and all that stuff, right? But, there really is something to getting these guys that have upside, that have DraftKings point consistency, and getting them at a really good price. And in a field like this, where some of the guys, like Matt Kuchar, 8,400 in this field, that's a pretty good price for Matt Kuchar. We usually see him a little bit more expensive until you get to the majors. But Munoz is 7,100. Lanto is 65. I'm not sure he's ever been that low before, quite honestly, at least not in this swing season. Let me see if I can pull him up really quickly. Here's Lanto. I've got 18 starts for him. He's been 6,700 before. Okay, so he hasn't been 6,400 since the Quicken Loans in 2018. And you can see recently this run since the Greenbrier in 2018, just racking. Oh, this is when he's under 8,000. My bad. Here he is. Here's all of his starts. And he got expensive at the Bermuda Championship, 10,600. So now he's like $4,000 cheaper. So that's why I like looking at this value board, because if you look, every time he's under $8,000, he basically returns you 10 times value, if not more, over the last 6 months. So this is the type of stuff that I've been looking a lot more into, and this is available. You can go to DFS on demand and check this out, but it should be a really interesting week. We don't have a lot of stats to go on. It's a pretty good field. We have a lot of big names here, and it's primetime golf. So I'm super stoked for it. We've got a lot going on this year, DFS on demand, me joining CBS Sports, this YouTube channel. It's going to be a lot of great things. So I'm super stoked to set out into 2020 with you. Let me know what you think and what you're most excited about. Tweet me. It's at RickRunGood. Best of luck this week. Talk to you soon.